That's all about water. Water makes a difference. Its state has an effect on everything from our moods to our thoughts to our very ability to interact, to motate. You could even say to live. As we understand life, water is a key to it all. But then I'm not telling you anything that you don't already know. Hello everyone, I'm Adam Abraham, and I'm with the President Water Company, and I want to share some things, a couple things. One, I brought with me some samples, so to speak. These are vortex generators, and this one here is part of our past, something we made when Jody and I actually began. It's one of the first products we developed for garden hoses, under sinks, shower heads, things like that. But this is part of our past. They work, this one works, but there were things that we could do to improve. This is also part of our past. It was never put in production, but it exists and it works. And we have been evolving our designs, our methods, and it's an ongoing process. We don't necessarily stop and tell you we've made an improvement. Sometimes we don't tell you much of anything, but we are in fact always seeking to improve the quality of our product as well as our understanding of what it does. This one here, this one, and as well as, actually, this is also part of our past. It's closer to our present because our designs have been evolving. This is part of our present. This is a PW 75. It goes on a 3/4 inch, or in metric term, it's a 20 millimeter line, okay? I think. I should know this, but I think I'm pretty good on 20 millimeter. I'll double check, or you'll see it down below when I edit this. We are beginning to make these, and we have been doing all this design work here in the US, where the small units, one with the 3/4 inch and also the 1/2 inch lines will be made, and that's the PW 50. It'll be a shorter version of this. It'll actually be shorter than this. Again, this is part of the evolution of the product, but for a 1/2 inch line, and I believe that's a 15 millimeter line. Again, I'll check those things just to be clear, because a 1 inch line is 25 millimeters. 3/4 inch would be around 20, and therefore a 1/2 inch line is going to be more like a 15 millimeter line, I do believe. We're going to talk more about what we do and what our vision is, because vortex generators is one of the things that we make, one of the products we make. These we make here in WA in Washington State. And interestingly, and in concert with my partner Jody Spencer, who's on, you can say, the other side of the planet, also in WA, but he's in Western Australia. We make the larger units that go on a 1 inch line and up, 2 inches, 3, 4, 6, 8, 10, and 12 inch lines. And just so you know, if you got a need for a line size that we don't make, such as a larger than that, no problem. We know what to do, and we can help you get to that place of adding vortex power, efficiency to your water management system. This is the thing, we have been learning and understanding that water is itself a very, very important component in so many things, so many processes, living and commercial, agricultural. as important as it is, its state is, generally speaking, under considered. Let's put it that way. It's overlooked. It's not factored in to the extent that we now know it can be and it should be. And that's really kind of the key here. Water should be factored in. The state of the water of your source should be factored in into anything that you're doing. And I'm talking agriculture, I'm talking health, I'm talking commercial. The state of the water changes everything, and our overlooking the state of the water, our thinking that water basically is 3 or even 4 phases, in the sense that there's solid, liquid, gas, and now we're with the, I'll say it's not, Dr. Gerald Pollack didn't start this, but he called it the 4th phase of water.
But we found the 4th phase, that's somewhere in between solid and liquid. That is, when liquid water meets a surface, a hard surface, particularly hydrophilic, that is water-loving surfaces, which most surfaces are. It's the kind of surface where if you drop a droplet of water on it, the water spreads out instead of beating up. So if the water meets that surface, the water transforms itself enormously. And it's not just the first 1 or 2 molecular layers that transform. It actually can be millions of molecular layers. It transforms itself into a totally different substance. The water undergoes a radical change.
There's a liquid phase of water that has different properties than other liquid states that they look the same, they appear to have the same properties, but they don't really have the same behavior. And so this is not new, it's not new information, but many, many years after Victor Schauberger, who did much research in this area starting in the 19th century, late 19th century, Mr. Schauberger passed in 1958, that information has been known. It has in fact been postulated, it's been supported by many, many researchers, including Nobel laureates, and yet today, in 2021, it's still pretty much ignored, generally speaking. However, I'm happy to say that people are beginning to listen, they are beginning to take interest, even if they don't fully understand the process by which vortexing actually changes the state of water, which causes changes in everything else that water in this changed state effectuates. We have some have engineers that are looking at it. We have wastewater treatment plants looking at it. We're talking, they're asking questions. We certainly have farmers. It just changes so many things that the time has come. Time is in fact overdue for this type of examination. So one of the things I want to do, just in terms of talking about our present and our future, one thing about the President Water Company is, yeah, we make vortex generators, that's what we call them. We call these products, whether they're in production or not, we call them vortex generators. And there are no moving parts in there, so, you know, don't have any picture of squirrels inside our pipes here, you know, pushing vortexes around or anything like that. There are no moving parts. The water itself, our units are interacting with the water. They are taking into consideration some of the properties that water possesses, and is causing or allowing or facilitating a change in motion, which causes fundamental changes in the quality, the nature, the physics of the water molecule and everything within it, and the relationships of everything within that volume. So, I'll give you an example. My partner asked me to talk about this, and I was asked, in fact, one of our customers asked a question about calcium buildup. There's so many places that have a lot of calcium in the ground and therefore in the water. And what often happens, say they have them in their wells, for example, and sometimes, in some cases they have other things too, other elements, concentrations of elements. And well, what they experience often is the buildup of accumulations of calcium on their pipes, in their pipes, on their wall, their surfaces, on their fixtures, things like that. And it's not always calcium. Sometimes it's something else. Sometimes it's iron. We have customers with the same type of situation. This basically happens, in this particular case, a customer asked me because he's got a well and he has to go down about 800 feet to get the water. Now, one rule of thumb that has become evident, at least to me in my travels, is that when something is really good for you, when it's really, really beneficial, nature tends to put it right, almost in plain sight. It makes it easy to get to. That's just one of the natures. There's a certain efficiency and convenience that comes when function is on a full state in nature. So, you know, the food will be abundant. It'll be around, be everywhere. The water itself will be healthy. It'll be abundant again, but it will also be functional. And when it gets harder and harder to get, you got to go deeper and deeper to get it. That's basically a clue that that water, even in the state that it's in, is not, it's impaired. I'll put it this way. Instead of saying it in the negative, let's say to describe it, it's handicapped. The water is handicapped. It's needy itself. It's dysfunctional. It's not able to do the things that it is able and capable of doing. What's interesting is that when you put a vortex generator on that line and you pull that water up and you pull it through, again, it changes so many things fundamentally. But one of the consequences of water being so hard to get, and for all practical purposes having been stagnant, sedentary, not moving, is that there are certain forces that exist within the water volume itself when the water is active that wane when that activity wanes. It's in the same way like if you had a wheel that was turning and turning at a high speed. You know, you put your fingers, you don't put your fingers in that spoke, okay? You do it at your, you know, with extreme caution. Actually, the truth is you don't do it, quite frankly. Why? Because the forces of that motion are enough to keep that wheel actually staying mostly vertical if it's turning, even against the law of the gravitational forces. That's simply motion. As those motions slow down, as the rotations reduce, then the forces wane. It's the same thing with water. And when it's been sitting around down in a well someplace, it tends to lose those forces that actually push away. They are not attractive but repulsive forces. They call it zeta potential. And those are the forces that keep things, the elements, in suspension. It keeps the, and there's, gosh, there's electrical and there are other things. This is supposed to have been a simple talk. But the point I'm making is that that water in that well has now become stagnant, and the molecules, the volume has slowly lost its ability to hold the contents in suspension, and they simply start to drop out. All right? Even though we don't see that there's change happening or even motion happening, that motion is happening all the time. And what happens when you put a vortex generator on and that water is now brought up through, it comes up and through, and let's consider that volume, which is now pretty chaotic, you know, there's no order to it. We take it through a cluster of vortex movements, and it basically accelerates it, the spin rates, the direction of it, it choreographs and coordinates it again, and it speeds it all up. And that water becomes, you could say, wetter. There's less friction involved to move it through the pipe. The molecules get smaller, and the elements that are in the water volume are not concentrated anymore. They become dispersed through the volume itself. And therefore, they're still there, but they're no longer big accumulations. And so we see so many customers who will have situations where they have filters, for example, and the filters are always getting clogged up and always getting clogged up. They put a vortex generator on, and all of a sudden, boy, those filters last a lot longer now. Why? The elements are still there. They haven't gone away. Their relationship to each other have been changed. They've been made much, much smaller, and they have also been changed magnetically, you might say. And the fact is, instead of getting stuck onto the filters to start to clog and accumulate there, they actually go through. Not to mention all that motion I was talking about, that rotational motion, which is taking them right through, and they're much, much smaller. So not a problem getting through the membranes of a filter. So that's one of the things that we want to talk about. That's why customers who put on vortex generators, they tend to see the scaling phenomena stop. To say it another way, the scaling phenomena tends to disappear. Not only does it tend to disappear, we've seen where descaling occurs, because this water is much more penetrating. It's highly penetrating, and it is also highly ionized. That motion being magnetic is also electrical. It affects the water electrically too, and you could call it an ion cloud, you can call it an electron cloud. It makes these, it creates these, and that also, with the penetrability, it helps to literally break up any accumulations of sediment inside the pipe, even if it's already there. When you keep running that water, which is now charged through that, charged and penetrating through that pipe, it starts to break those accumulations up, and they end up coming out the pipe too, and the phenomena itself of accumulating, of scaling, tends to stop. So that's one of the things that I may just pull that out and make that just one conversation or one answer to a question on its own. The one other thing, I was talking to Jody last night, and some people have asked about how do our products compare to that of Grander systems. Now, Grander systems have been around since the late 1970s. Now, I mentioned that Victor Schauberger passed in 1958. He documented so many things about water and its nature and its capacities and potentials. He talked about how water has a season, and there are times, and really we're talking about states, where if water is in a certain state, certain things can happen, whereas they are not able to be done when water is in a different state. Hey, I got a friend here. How you doing? Oh, it's all right. So Schauberger talked about this quite some time ago. In the 1970s, end of 1970s, I believe his name is Johann Grander, started a company called, a system called Grander Water, and I believe it's in Austria. And clearly I'll speak in somewhat vague terms because I have an idea of how it works, and if someone knows more specifically, they'll correct me where I'm wrong. But what I do understand is that in their systems, they take and they activate, by their own method, water. They have a sample of water which they activate, and then they put into a module that is then deposited, inserted into the stream of water, like into a pipe. And the water goes around it. Now, this device is producing some type of field effect, and the water essentially is being changed as a consequence and a result of the field that this element, which is now in the water volume, impresses on the water as it passes by. That is how impressionable water is. And they've got 40 years and, I don't know, 15, 20,000 customers, installations, very large ones, that can attest to the efficacy of their methods. Now, essentially, we differ in the sense that we are likened that we're putting something in the water.
I'm referring to objects in the stream of water, not additives of any type.
And we are likened in the sense that we are having somewhat of an impact with the stuff that we're putting in the water. But the effect of our method is different in the sense that while Grandeur is putting out a level of having a field effect, so to speak, we are simply putting some elements to choreograph movement that physically changes everything within the water. It does work. I'm not saying that it does work. I'm saying that work is performed. Work happens. Grinding happens. Water is incompressible. We have designed our systems, our apparatus in such a way to take advantage of these qualities of water to literally cause this bringing down in size, where you talk about nanoparticles. We're talking getting down to 2 micron in size particles by the fact that water can't be compressed, and we have designed the enclosure in such a way to cause these oppositional flows and a grinding effect. So in a way of speaking, we are the elements are being beat up. They are being exposed to extreme pressure differentials. You have in the center of every vortex is essentially a void. There's a point of nothing goes in the center of a vortex, but something is there, okay? You might call that center a portal. But everything that exists that is measurable, all the particles move around that portal. The particles move around the portal, okay? But they are going in, and some are going in, some are coming out, all right? There are levels of existence of substance that are more subtle than our senses and our sensors can take, they can measure. There are some devices that measure with far greater sensitivity than you typically are going to find in a typical lab. But my point basically is this: there are super high pressures, and there are great changes in temperature, there are changes in sound, there are changes in frequencies, there are changes in electrical state because of all of those differentials that occur inside a vortical event. A tornado is an example of such things where with all that movement, you see something called lightning, which is plasma. And it doesn't matter the size of the vortex, whether it's a hurricane or whether, I call them tornadoes in a can. We create a cluster of tornadic phenomenon inside our vortex unit. And we do it with a level of, I want to say, significance that I will, just in my opinion, is far more profound and is far greater than simply putting one element inside the line and having water move around it. Okay, that element is putting a field out, but we're creating and certainly affecting the field, but we're affecting every water molecule and everything that is within it, and we're affecting it profoundly. Okay, because in a grander system, it's all going in that direction, but in our system, it eventually gets in that direction, but sometimes it's going in this direction, sometimes it's going in. It's doing a whole bunch of additional activity, additional changes. Some of those flows are going against each other in a vortex. They've been reversed, and when they come across other flows that are going in the other direction, you got that opposition, you got that grinding work that is actually happening that is simply can't be done any other way. So, you know, I love the success that grander systems have had and will continue to have. You know, it's a big world out there, and there's a big need for what these devices do. Basically what I'm saying is that we are stepping up. We've been around this for a while now to learn a bit more about it, and the fact is we're still learning, and we will continue to. What we have learned, though, is significant enough to know that first of all, we have something that's of some use and value to everyone, for that matter, and that includes the knowledge of what this phenomena does, what it means, and why it's important. And the last thing I guess I want to say is that there are other ways, there are many ways, to use a vortex event to get different types of work done. And so this is our present now, this is our future. It's not all we got in mind. And we're already working on some of those other things. So thank you for your time. And I guess the last thing I'll say is PresidentWater.com is now PresidentWater.co. We are President Water Company, the President Water Company, and our website is now PresidentWater.co. Anyway, thanks a lot. If you have any questions, we do still exist on Facebook, and I'll say we haven't become politically incorrect there, but in addition to that, yeah, you can find us on Instagram. I'm thinking Twitter. We'll talk about that. No, PresidentWater.co. Thanks so much.